A Tunisian teenager has caused a major surprise at the Tokyo Olympic Games by winning a swimming gold, while Team GB has claimed a first silver medal. Bradley Sinden narrowly missed out on Taekwondo's top prize. National and family triumph for Japan in judo as a brother and sister both win gold. They're the first siblings to win gold medals in different events on the same day. Wildfires across the western United States have forced thousands of people to spend the weekend in evacuation centres. More than 80 large wildfires across 13 states have burnt around 1.3 million acres in recent weeks. The UK government is considering plans to require football fans to be fully vaccinated if they want to go to Premier League matches from October. Supporters could be locked out of stadiums in England unless they are double jabbed.
In the Czech Republic, officials say a rare tornado windstorm killed at least 5 people and injured hundreds in the country's southeast. Mongolia's new president takes office during a ceremony in the capital, Ulaanbaatar. In Myanmar, a group of protesters in Yangon risk arrest and violence from security forces to hold a demonstration against the military government. And France's political conservatives ask supporters to vote in the second part of area elections Sunday. The results will help decide party candidates for the 2022 presidential election.
A new vaccine debate now on whether your employer can require you to get a vaccination. ABC's Deirdre Bolton is here with more on that part of the story. Deirdre, good morning.
Good morning. With the Delta variant throwing a wrench in many companies' back to the office plans.
From various hospitals to big banks and more than 400 colleges and universities, some businesses across the country are now demanding employees get the vaccine.
I urge every employer go to whatever form of mandate you are comfortable with because it will help us fight COVID.
This week, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio pleaded with private employers to impose vaccination requirements as workers begin to head back to the office. And it's not the only city. San Francisco is requiring all of its municipal employees get vaccinated once the vaccines receive full approval from the FDA.
It was important for me to make sure that we set an example with our workforce.
In sports, the NFL sent a memo to players strongly urging them to get vaccinated, saying teams will forfeit and be slapped with a loss if a game is canceled because of a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players. And neither team's players will be paid. As for corporations, Morgan Stanley and BlackRock will bar unvaccinated employees from their New York offices. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase are making it mandatory for U.S.-based staff to disclose their vaccination status.
Many companies are so anxious to get back to work, and I think they are imposing vaccine policies, and employees do need to be aware of that.
Generally, legal experts say that employees can be fired for refusing the vaccine. There are exceptions for medical or religious reasons, but to be sure, the law community is going to have a very busy next few years. Matt?
Yeah, Deirdre, thank you so much. The legal ramifications of this are something we're watching. Joining us now, legal analyst Areva Martin. Areva, good morning. Thank you for joining us. So the first question is, people want to know, can employers legally require employees to get a vaccine?
The simple answer is yes, Matt. An employer can require its employees to be vaccinated. There is actually a Supreme Court case dating back to 1905 that upheld vaccine mandates for smallpox in the state of Massachusetts. And we've recently seen federal courts, both in Texas and in Indiana, uphold mandates that were implemented, one by the hospital in Texas and a university in Indiana.
I think a lot of people want to know, too, what protections or options do workers have in this situation?
There are some exceptions, Matt. If you have a disability, if you have some kind of medical condition that would allow you to opt out of a vaccine, that may be applicable if your employer goes to a mandate. Also, if you have a religious belief that prevents you from getting a vaccine, you may be able to use that. But generally speaking, employers can impose, rules, restrictions, regulations on its employees, and courts have upheld them. An employer can tell you on Friday, everyone has to wear green to work, and that would be considered legitimate. So employees have few options if they don't have a medical condition or a religious exemption.
So it sounds as if there will be a number of court challenges, but they won't succeed.
I think you're right about that, Matt. We're going to see a lot of litigation around this issue, employees who are going to challenge these mandates. But so far, federal district courts, like I said, have already upheld mandates, and there is that Supreme Court case. So I don't think employees are going to have many options. Some will have to opt out and decide they perhaps want to work someplace else. But employers at this point have the upper hand as it relates to vaccine mandates.
The ongoing legal battle will certainly be fascinating to watch. Areva Martin with us this morning. Areva, thank you.
We start with history. At the Tokyo Games, Japan's Abe Hifumi and Uta have become the first siblings to win judo golds at the same Olympics. The younger Abe Uta got things started by winning the women's 52-kilogram category on Sunday evening. The 21-year-old defeated French rival Amandine Bouchard in the final. And less than an hour later, her brother, Hifumi, won gold in the men's 66-kilogram category. He beat Georgia's Baza Markvelashvili. Hifumi said afterwards that his sister's victory motivated him going into the final. He added that he was able to follow his game plan and perform to the best of his abilities. Uta said their victories were the result of the entire family's hard work and dedication. Sunday also featured the first ever Olympic skateboarding event, and it was Japan's Horigome Yuto who claimed the gold. The 22-year-old got off to a slow start in the men's street competition, finishing 6th in the qualifying heat. But he was at his best in the final, where he landed 4 out of 5 tricks to rack up the highest overall score. Horigome said afterwards that he felt he had nothing to lose and skated as aggressively as possible. The Tokyo native beat a crowded field that included American star Nyjah Huston. The gold medal favorite fell repeatedly in the final and finished 7th. Another sport made its Olympic debut on Sunday. Qualifying heats for the men's and women's surfing competitions were held in Tsurigasaki, Chiba, east of Tokyo. Meanwhile, in swimming, Japan's Ohashi Yui won gold in the women's 400-meter individual medley. The 25-year-old has recently struggled with injuries and illness, but she cruised to victory on Sunday, finishing over half a second ahead of her closest rival. Ohashi said afterwards that she never imagined she would be standing on the podium and thanked her teammates for their support. The U.S.'s Chase Kalich won gold in the men's side of the competition. He took silver in the same event in Rio, but went one better this time around. It's the first gold for the U.S. in Tokyo. And in the women's 400-meter freestyle relay, Australia set a world record as it won gold. Canada took the silver, while the U.S. finished with the bronze. In archery, South Korea beat athletes from the Russian Olympic Committee in the women's team final. The country has won gold in the event at every Olympics since it was introduced at the Seoul Games in 1988. Tokyo's scorching heat has proved to be a big concern for the tennis events. The top players in competition are calling for matches to be rescheduled to avoid the high temperatures. World number 1 Novak Djokovic described the humid conditions as brutal after his first-round victory on Saturday. He asked organizers to move matches to the late afternoon for the remaining competition. The International Tennis Federation responded by introducing a new set of rules to help cope with the intense heat. Players in singles matches can now request a 10-minute break between the second and third sets if the temperature reaches a certain level. They can use the interval to eat or drink and take a shower, but they will not be allowed to receive medical treatment or coaching. Doubles players will not be allowed to request these breaks. This comes amid growing calls for organizers to ensure the safety of athletes. An archer fainted during a qualifying round match on Friday. Tokyo officials say they will work with individual sporting bodies to come up with additional measures. Kimia Alizadeh Zenurin has fallen short in her bid to become the first member of the refugee Olympic team to win a medal. She lost in the bronze medal match in the women's Taekwondo 57-kilogram category. Alizadeh started off by beating an opponent from her home country, Iran, in a preliminary matchup. She advanced through 2 more rounds before losing in the semifinals. In the bronze medal match, she took on Turkey's Hatice Kubra Ilgun, but lost 6 points to 8. This was the 23-year-old's second Olympics. She previously won bronze in the 2016 Rio Games, where she competed for Iran. She was the country's first female Olympic medalist. Alizadeh defected from Iran in 2020 after making comments critical of the government. She now lives in Germany, where she was granted refugee status. The head of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees says refugee athletes competing in the Tokyo Games are an inspiration to everyone facing challenges. Filippo Grandi spoke to NHK on Sunday about the athletes who are originally from 11 countries. The refugee team followed Greece as the second squad to enter the national stadium during Friday's opening ceremony.
They have fled from war, persecution, discrimination. So the symbolism that they carried in the Tokyo Stadium was so powerful in this very difficult situation that Japan and the world is facing.
Grandi said the fact they are competing with the world's top athletes is such an incredible achievement for people who are on the run, escaping, deprived of all the basics. Grandi also touched on a memorandum signed last week by Japan and the UNHCR. Japanese immigration authorities will seek advice from the UN agency to make their criteria for granting refugee status more transparent.
The system is a bit slow and cumbersome and can be improved, and this memorandum can help us work together.
He said the agency is ready to give Japan expert advice on refugee-related issues. The organizers said 10 people related to the Games tested positive for the coronavirus, including 2 athletes from overseas. Cases linked to the Games since July 1st now stand at 132. The Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee issued the results of the latest PCR testing on Sunday. A Dutch rower was found to be positive after competing in a preliminary race. He is one of the 2 athletes in the latest cases. They also included game officials from abroad who are staying in the athletes' village and people from the media. Away from the Games, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government confirmed 1,763 new cases in the capital on Sunday. The figure has topped 1,000 for 6 straight days. Meanwhile, about 4,000 volunteers registered in Saitama Prefecture lost their assignments following a ban on spectators. The prefecture has decided to reassign them to welcome athletes heading for events and cleaning areas around the venues. One of them said the decision to ban spectators came as a shock, but he is proud to contribute even in a small way. Tropical storm Nepartek is moving north over the sea southeast of Japan. It could pass near or make landfall in the eastern or northeastern part of the country on Tuesday. It has forced a schedule change on the Tokyo Olympics. Meteorological officials are warning the large storm could bring strong winds, heavy rain, and high waves. They say that Nepartek was heading north on Sunday near the Ogasawara Islands. Weather forecasters say the storm is growing stronger as it heads northwest. It could pass near or make landfall in eastern Japan or the Tohoku region on Tuesday. Officials are calling for caution as the storm could bring very rough weather. Organizers of the Tokyo Games have moved up some of the rowing events by one day to Sunday to avoid the bad weather. They have also decided to postpone events scheduled for Tuesday to Wednesday. Those were the stories for this hour.